This I wrote down as the wow moment of the movie.
Yeah, dude.
We finally get to the point of the mannequin, and what a wow moment it was. Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak,
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
and we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel. Yeah.
All right. Well, here we are.
Yeah.
As of this recording, it is early October 2024. It is officially spooky season.
I love spooky season. You know me. For anyone, if you don't know me, like the moment we get into this territory, it's nothing but horror movies and spooky season. Like, I love it.
Yeah, so we're just going to return to that this year. It was really popular last year. We did a horror movie every week, followed by we did a ranking of our favorite horror movies to close out the month. So we're just going to return to that this year. Our goal is to put out a horror movie breakdown for you folks in these coming weeks. So this first one here has been creating a lot of buzz.
Yeah.
So let's just get to it here.
Let's do it.
This movie was directed by Damien McCarthy. It was released just recently this year, July 19th, 2024. Today, the Panel Bros are going to be doing a breakdown for Oddity.
Yes. I was really excited to just watch this movie. As I had spoken to you before off the air, was that I went into this movie completely blind outside of just the buzz that you had mentioned. Scrolling through social media, it's always a great thing when you see filmmakers and viewers just talking about a movie that kind of came out of left field, because I didn't see any advertising for it. I haven't seen a single trailer for it. Didn't even read a plot. I just started seeing people talk about this movie. And being spooky season, I'm always looking for new and exciting things. So the moment I got an opportunity to watch this, which is available for streaming, I rented it, I watched it, I enjoyed it. And you contacted me and said, "Hey, it's spooky season's up. You ready?" And I was like, "I just saw Oddity, man. Like, this is one we can talk about."
Yeah, and for me, it was an easy decision. You already watched it, and it's been in my feed for several months now. Upon release, a lot of buzz as far as reviews go, very critically acclaimed and such. So gave it a shot, and here we are. So
yeah,
let's get started. Alrighty, so we have our opening scene here, and it's another horror trope that's fine because it's done well, where it's just really quiet and you have that feeling of dread. You see the woman by herself; she's in the house. We get a break in the silence when she calls her husband, who is at a psychiatric hospital. He's over there, and once again, that's another old trope too. These psychiatric hospitals, whatever you want to call them, asylums back in the day. Want to use that word? Shout out to, Batman and Arkham Asylum, of course. But these aren't very nice places, so to speak, when they're depicted in movies. So we're already setting the tone here. But once we get back to the house and we see the woman, that's when it starts getting disturbing, so to speak. So alone one night, we have Dani, the wife of psychiatrist Ted. She is brutally murdered while renovating the couple's newly acquired country home. And Olin, one of Ted's former patients, visited Dani that evening, warning her that a stranger had infiltrated the home. So let's get to that scene here. Let's talk about that.
Yes.
So I put down here, how convincing was he to let her in? He's like pleading with her. All you could see is his face through the, the peephole there, or whatever you call that contraption there. And, someone's in the house and she's like, "What are you talking about? There's nobody in the house. And I'm going to call the police." He's like, yes, please call the police.
Yeah.
So
the scene works really well because as a viewer, we're essentially in the exact same line of sight that she is. Because when he comes to the door and says someone went into the house, there's nothing alluding to that prior. We're essentially in the same shoes that she's in. We don't see anybody. We don't hear anybody. Her character doesn't. So all we have is the information that this character is presenting to her. and it's eerie because you don't know how honest and sincere this individual is. This is a stranger. This is someone that she does not know. She is home alone. Her husband is working overnight at the psychiatric hospital, and the idea that a stranger is essentially telling her someone got into your house, and obviously they give him a glass eye just to give him this sort of unconventional look, where you can't help but just feel like you have this one side of his profile that seems like he's giving all this emotion, and then you just have this blank stare of a prosthetic eye. And again, it just adds to the uncomfortableness of the situation. And as a viewer, someone watching it, I was like, oh, I don't know what I would do in this situation, because this guy is clearly saying there's someone in your house. I saw them get in your house. You've got to open the door. You've got to open the door. Obviously, she doesn't want to open the door. And you brought up a good point when she mentions, oh, I'll call the police. And he goes, yes, do that. Call the police. And when he said that, I was kind of like, does he really want her to call the police? Is he trapping her still? So it's a really good scene because essentially, like, we have no idea still.
So the music is building, you hear it, and you're begging her not to open the door
Yeah, you're like, don't
and
do it.
please don't do this. And then she backs up and she says, and he convinces her to do it. And then the camera pans, he backs up, and all you can see is his eyes in the darkness, like a cat almost.
Mm-hmm.
And all you hear him say is, yeah, good. And then we see the title card for Oddity.
It's
So
it's 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 great because he tells her, he does indeed tell her that he's like, okay, I'm gonna go into town. Like, he goes, I'm gonna go into town. Just like, just get your phone and call the police, because I think she said she can't find her phone, right? Like,
she said she
that's why
couldn't find her
she
phone.
couldn't find her
Yeah.
phone. And I think that was, if I remember correctly, that's the reason why she was going to her car. And I think it was because she couldn't find her phone. So I remember him saying, okay, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna go into town. I'm gonna go try to get help. If you can find your phone, make the call. So like, she does it, and like,
Right. Well,
you have no.
that's later on. That's
Oh,
later
okay,
on.
yeah,
Yeah, we're just
yeah,
talking
okay.
about the beginning right now.
All
So
right,
yeah,
sorry. Back up,
it's all right.
everybody.
No, no,
Keep
no,
going.
no. It's okay. It's okay. But yeah, just as far as the title card goes, that's
Mhm.
where we imagine that she opens the door to let him in.
Yes.
Um, so Olin is ultimately convicted of the crime, and he, unfortunately, is later found brutally murdered in his room in the psychiatric hospital.
Yep.
So back to back, we get two back to back, disturbing scenes here. One with him and her at the house, and now one with his neighbor at the psychiatric
Yeah.
hospital. So you see the crime committed from the point of view of his neighbor at the hospital.
Mhm.
His neighbor is terrified to the point that he hides under the bed, covering his mouth so he doesn't scream.
Yep.
A trope which is used well.
Mhm.
There was a lot of tropes in this movie, by the way, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
felt like they used them really well. And you could hear someone screaming, you could hear just a bunch of noise, you could tell there's a struggle going on. Um, and then he goes to see what happened, and it gets quiet again. It gets
Yeah.
quiet. He goes to see what happened, and you see his reach down and then pick something up, and it's covered in blood. And then we pan out, and all we see is this body. And for lack of a better term here, the head is like smashed to bits, basically.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
There's
gone.
there's nothing there. And then he wipes the object, and we see it's the prosthetic eye. It's Olin's
Yep.
eye. So
Yep. Again, we don't get to see the act itself, and there's a lot of less is more. And even though we don't get to see the act itself, when we get to see what's left, it's a horrific image. Like,
right.
again, you just see the body, and there's essentially nothing left here. And you can't help but think, like, what we didn't get to see was something extremely, extremely violent.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things in movies where sometimes you don't have to see the act itself. Knowing what happened and seeing the aftermath are just as bad.
And I'm wondering what was going through the man's mind, because he was terrified when he heard what was going on, but when he walked in the room, did he not see the body? Did he not see
Yeah,
what was going like, and he reached down into the pool of blood to pull that thing out. So
yeah,
in my mind, I'm like, what's going through your head here that you
yeah,
walked in on that?
yeah. And obviously, a lot of these people are not well.
Fair.
And I'm curious, you know, in what way his guard was down. I don't know. Was it the sounds that were mostly triggering? I have no idea. But yeah, he walks in the room and he kind of sees it, and there's no big audible reaction. It's just kind of just like, oh, and he bends down, he picks up, and we get the
Right. And
prosthetic
then
eye shot.
maybe he felt he was hallucinating it. Who
Yeah,
knows? And he was just
yeah,
investigating the situation. We don't know. So,
yeah. We don't get to get too much perspective on that individual when they walk
right.
into that room.
Yeah. So 1 year later, Danny's twin sister, Darcy, um, a blind clairvoyant with psychometric powers, is visited by Ted at her Cabinet of Curiosities shop in Cork, and the two make plans to visit again. So I
Hmm.
had to look some words up here. So first of all, she's described as a clairvoyant.
Okay.
Um, so according to Google here, a clairvoyant is a person who claims to have a supernatural ability to perceive events in the future or beyond normal sensory context. So somebody that can possibly see the future.
Mhm.
Um, what were the name of those individuals in Minority Report?
Oh,
The precogs.
precogs. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yep, the
yeah,
precogs. Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So that type of deal. And then psychometric. This was a new word for me. So, psychometry is a paranormal ability that involves gaining knowledge about an object, person, or place by making physical contact with it.
Mhm.
So I can touch the thing that you own and tell you everything about you by doing that.
Yeah.
So that's pretty
And
interesting.
again, it was great going into this blind because I had no idea we were introducing this type of element in this movie.
Yeah.
The idea that one, she has a twin sister who's blind but has these gifts, and I was really looking forward to see how they were going to come into play in the story.
Yeah. So there's um they meet and they talk and they have a conversation and it's very casual. It's, oh yeah,
Mhm.
maybe you should come by sometime. It's been a year since
Yeah.
her sister passed away, so that's fine. But then we get to see the shop, and it's
Yeah.
I keep saying the word trope, but it's another trope. Just
It
the
re- it It reminded me of, like, the Conjuring universe, where they
yeah,
always have those rooms of all the inanimate objects that have these, elaborate, crazy spiritual backstories that are haunted and whatnot, and you have this item over there and this item over there, and you're kinda just scanning the room. Like, I remember watching it, I was scanning the room for all the types of objects that they had, and obviously, you get the doll that we see in other movies,
yeah,
you'll get, like, a suitcase, and you're kinda just like, "Alright." And like you said, it's not something we haven't seen before, but in no way was I kind of just like, oh, this kind of thing. It was like, oh,
right.
this is kind of cool. Let's
Did,
see what this is
didn't they
about.
have the monkey with the symbols?
Yes, yes. You know what I mean? Like again, there's these things that feel very familiar to us
Right.
as viewers and people who watch horror movies. And maybe that was his intention, is to feel somewhat familiar with this type of environment, this type of world. And again, introducing that when essentially we had someone who was brutally murdered. I was like, I wonder if this is going to come into play, her abilities, these objects and whatnot, and see how everything moves forward.
And to your point, maybe the director, when putting this film together, they wanted you to feel kind of safe almost. Oh, I've seen this before.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
we
know what I
oh
mean?
we know where things are going, because once things take the turn, no, did not see
No,
that coming.
that's one thing that I'll say about this movie that I was telling someone else about it, where I was like, "You know what was great? I didn't know where this movie was going at some
No,
points." Like, I was like, "All right, this I thought it was going this way, and it took a turn. Okay, it's gonna go this way, and it took another turn." So again, maybe there's some intention behind the idea of introducing some familiar tropes, especially in horror films where you kind of go, like you and I both know, like we can kind of feel the essence of a jump scare coming in horror movies. And sometimes directors will go, oh, you, here, 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 here. And you're like, here it comes. And then it doesn't come. So
right.
I wonder if it was intentional to have some of these tropes in this horror movie and some of the imagery we see with the shop where it was like, you've seen this before, right? We're going to make you comfortable. We're going to make you think you know what's coming and you have no idea.
So we do see the shop has a lot of disturbing items, children's toys,
Mhm.
and we see Darcy possibly getting a premonition, and we see her go into this like trance, so to speak, while she's getting her premonition or seeing her vision and such. We shift over to Ted and his girlfriend Yana.
Mhm.
She shows him the camera, and in one of the shots, you can see Dani's face.
Yeah.
So he's trying to explain it away. He's like, "Oh, it's one of her old cameras." He's like, "I took the shot a few days ago.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
already been passed away for over a year now." And he's like, "Yeah, whatever." But then she tells him a story where she saw Dani in the hallway after she turned the lights off.
Mhm.
And if this some great foreshadowing here, or to throw us off, he turns to her and he says, "Just to be clear, my dead wife is not haunting this house."
Yeah, like again, it's an introduction to a spirit, a ghost, a haunting in a way that we've seen before. So again, when I went in completely blind, so I'm like, oh, I wonder if this is the movie. Like, is the wife going to be haunting? Is
Right.
this what's going to happen? Like, is that? And essentially, no, that's not what we're going to get. But it was very eerie. Again, the movie does really good with lighting, with shadows, with atmosphere, with dread, so that even just looking at a photo on a camera screen and seeing what is very much her face made me feel really uncomfortable. And as you said, he tried to explain it away and said, "Oh, she took tons of photos in here, double exposure, this and this and this and that." And she goes, "I took this a few days ago." And immediately he has to like shut it down, just like, you know what? My dead wife is not haunting this place, and you're kind of just like, maybe she is, maybe she isn't. I don't know.
So several days later, Darcy arrives unexpectedly at the country house where Ted now resides with Yana,
Hmm.
who they've established as his new girlfriend. She's a pharmaceutical representative. Preceding Darcy's arrival is the shipment of a large crate containing a strange, life size wooden mannequin. We don't know that until a while later, though.
Oh yeah,
And they do a good job of making sure you don't see the mannequin at
yeah,
first. So Ted departs to his night shift at the hospital, leaving Darcy alone with Yana, who wishes to leave but is prevented from doing so when the car keys vanish.
yup,
So they're trying to tell her, "Hey, listen, it's a bad time. We didn't plan for this. I have to go to work. She has to leave." And she's like, "Well, I'd like to stay." And he's like, "Well, that's fine." Eventually, it's like, "Okay, fine. You could stay, but I still have to go to work."
yeah,
And Yana's trying to leave too, but suspiciously, she can't find her keys. And and we're thinking like, okay, did Darcy do this? Because
yeah,
they're trying to establish she has supernatural abilities. You know, maybe she doesn't have to be able to see to be able to pull stuff off. We don't know.
yeah.
Um,
They
yeah,
make it a point to let you know that Yana's not comfortable at all. You know, Yana's already feeling a little iffy being in the house, knowing the history and seeing what she's seen on the camera. So she just wants to bail. She's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go stay in the city. I don't want to stay here." And as you mentioned, Darcy shows up, and you have that moment where she's like, "You invited me," and he's like, "I don't." And she goes, "Remember, you said we should do this again?" And he was like, "Oh," and you can see that he did one of those things where he nonchalantly invited her, but he really wasn't trying to. He was doing that. I'll just say this to be nice, but she took him literally on it. And he's like, "Well, I got to work anyway," and Yana's just like, and he's like, "Look, just stay with her. It's fine." And she's just like, "Nah, I'm gonna go." But her keys are missing. And like you, I'm like, was it Darcy? Because
right.
she looks everywhere, man. Like they're not in the car, they're not in any room in the house. Um, just bathroom, bedroom. This woman turns the house pretty much upside down, and she cannot find them. And I'm like, so again, I'm like, okay, where's the store? Like, where are we gonna go? Like, did Darcy hide the keys?
Right.
So then you start making leaps. You're like, well, if Darcy hid them, why does she hide them? Does she know something that I don't know? So we're going along for the ride, but right off the bat, it's getting tense. And as you mentioned, we still have not seen what's inside the box.
Right.
The Wooden Man is there, but we don't know. We haven't seen it yet.
So here's the thing, though. They talked about an exact date. They established the anniversary
Mm-hmm.
of Danny's death. So
Yeah.
she showed up, not saying anything, And already it's like, did you forget the anniversary of your wife's
Yeah.
death already?
Yeah.
So we're already kind of establishing this thing. It's like, oh hey, you're already shacked up with a new girlfriend. Did you
Mhm.
already forget about my sister? And then
Yeah.
that's the mode that we're going in here, which happens once he leaves Yana and Darcy by themselves. So um Darcy drops a line. She says, "I was hoping the three of us could spend some time together." And
Yeah,
once
dude.
again, we still don't see the mannequin. So they're building up to this moment,
Yes.
obviously. So as they sit down, Darcy begins to eat, and Yana's drinking her glass of wine, but Darcy doesn't hold back. So, you know, Yana tells her we met at the hospital, and Darcy asks her, "Were you a patient?"
You're patient. I laughed a little bit. I was like, "Is she trying to insult her? Was
Right.
that like?" She was like, "Were you a patient?" You know what I mean?
Yeah. So Yana just turns to her, goes, "No, I was a senior sales rep for a
Mhm.
pharmaceutical company." And then Darcy comes back at her again. She's like, "So there was nothing going on between the two of you while my sister was still alive? You already established you were friends. Were
Mhm.
you more than friends?" And Yana's like, "No, whatever you're hinting at, no, that's not happening." And then finally and then it zooms out and we see that big old ugly mannequin
Bro.
sitting there. So they've been having these conversations with this ugly, scary, wrote this down, this ugly, scary looking mannequin sitting there. So to
Yeah.
add tension to the moment, they're talking, having a tension filled conversation while this ugly thing is sitting there watching them.
Yeah. It's it's an uncomfortable image. It is
Right.
it has a very disturbed face, almost as in shock, pain, just scary in
Right.
general. And its two hands are on the table, and this thing is at least 6 foot tall. And you can tell, and it's just a very uncomfortable situation. And she's asking her questions, and again, we're alluding to things. So when she's like, "So nothing was going on between you and my then brother-in-law at the time," so I'm like, "Uh oh," like right, like I'm like, does Darcy believe there was a possible affair? Is this going to lead to this? Does she plan on doing something with this wooden man? I was hoping the three of us could have a conversation. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I don't know where this is going, but I'm so intrigued. And they keep that tension. The tension is tight. Like you can cut the tension with a knife, and they don't loosen it. Like it's just there, and they're just building and building and building.
So the conversation continues and it moves to what Darcy does for a living. And once again, it's like she's skeptical, Yana. And
Mhm.
it's like, all right, well, good for you. You can make a
Yeah.
living off of that. And that leads us to what I found to be the best dialogue in the whole movie for me. So Ricardo and I are going to reenact that right now.
All
Um,
right.
Ricardo's going to be Darcy and I'm going to be Yana.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready, Ricardo.
All right. If you were to knock at the door, would you allow them in?
Of course not. Do I look stupid?
I have no idea what you look like. You sound stupid.
Excuse me?
Do I look stupid?
No.
My sister and I were identical. So that must mean that she didn't look stupid either.
I never said she did.
You implied it. Dani would never allow a strange man into her home in the middle of the night. Olin did not kill my sister.
So they're taking their jabs at each other. Um,
Hmm.
Mostly Darcy taking the jabs at Yana,
Yeah.
and then it just leads to this,
Yeah.
So, um, and she said the wrong thing because it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't want to be here. Do you ever think about what happened to my sister? Yeah, that's a part of it. And Darcy knew it. She baited her. She was like, "Would you
Yeah. She
ever open the
baited her in.
Yeah,
She
would you
baited
ever
her in.
open the door?" No, I'm not stupid. It's just like, "Oh,
And
really?
that right there.
So my sister's stupid?" You
Yeah,
know?
again, we're alluding to the idea that Darcy believes something. She's like, again,
Right.
with the whole question of like, were you messing with my then brother all the time? This and this. Oh, what would you do? And she brought her in. And she goes, no, I'm not stupid. And she's like, I got you. So now there's already this negative connotation that you have about my deceased sister. She must be stupid. Then you're saying she's stupid. We're twins. Do I look stupid? No. Well, then like
Yeah.
what you're saying I look stupid, and it's a great dialogue back and forth, and the tension is risen, like it's getting hot right now.
Yeah. And I thought it was great because it led to a reveal. Because now
Mhm.
now our suspicions are building. Now it's like, what, Olin didn't do it? Okay, where are we leading
Yeah,
to now?
yeah, and
So
because she says it with such conviction, there isn't a doubt in Darcy's mind, and knowing what we know about Darcy at this point, it's safe for us to go, okay, she does know something. What does she know?
And great use of flashbacks here, which the movie does. The
Mhm.
character will say something and then they'll show it. So they show it here. Thankfully, Dani did not let Olin in the house.
Nope.
She stepped back and said, "No, I'm not going to do it." And this entire sequence of the flashback of the night of Dani's death, it's pretty scary.
Mhm.
Olin leaves, as you stated earlier, because he's trying to go get some help because she couldn't find her phone. She starts having doubts if she's alone, so she goes to the tent where she's at, um, and you see that the camera was used, and I believe, I guess the person was taking pictures of the area, she
Yeah,
was in.
because you just see the flash go off.
Yeah. And then she actually sees the pictures and she's like, "How
Yeah.
could these pictures have been taken? I didn't take them." Um, she's inside the tent. She goes to unzip the tent, and as she's doing, you're just waiting for something to
Yeah, dude.
jump out and get her. You're waiting. You had stated to me off the air, it's a great use of shadows.
Mhm.
Um, and then we see what happened.
Oh,
We
yeah.
see, a figure with a mask, and you once again,
You
you don't see
don't
the
see it.
you don't see you see it before, and then you see after with the blood everywhere.
I am very grateful that we didn't see it because you can tell by the aftermath how violent it was.
Yeah,
You can tell, like, the tent again, color is very important, and what shows up where, and the tent is yellow. So the color red from what happened is just it's all over the tent. And you see the intruder sitting by the tent just staring at what they had just done.
right.
And there's just blood everywhere. And it's one of those situations where it's like, I'm kind of glad because that probably would have been extremely, extremely violent. And sometimes, less is more. Sometimes less is just more. And it invokes more fear because you didn't have to see it, but you know what happened.
Yeah. So Yana is frightened when she notices. We get back to the present here.
Mhm.
Yana is frightened when she notices the mannequin inexplicably moving positions and drops her cell phone from an upstairs landing, destroying it.
Yep.
She looks over and she's looking at Darcy, who's just kind of hanging out or whatever. And she looks down and she sees the mannequin looking up
Yeah, dude.
directly at her. It's a big jump scare. When she goes back downstairs, the mannequin's facing forward again.
Mhm. It's so eerie, dude.
Um, upon examining the mannequin, Yana finds several strange objects inside holes in the mannequin's head in the back, including photographs of Dani and Darcy, locks of hair, a tooth, and finally a vial of blood.
Mhm.
So she's poking in there with like these tongs type
Yeah.
deal and just pulling stuff out. And just from the sound of things, Darcy jumps up. Darcy was sleeping. That's what was
Yes.
happening.
Yep, she was asleep.
Darcy jumps up. She yells at her to put them back.
Mhm.
So Yana does so. She says goodnight, and then Darcy goes to sit with the mannequin in the middle of the dark to do
Mhm.
what?
Just yep,
To do her thing again. So,
yep.
um, if I could have your reaction to all the stuff that's happening
It
here.
was this was the most we got to see of the wooden man. And again, not being able to see it change positions, but every time she looked at it, it was in a different position, was horrifying. It was so scary. Again, a less is more approach it with the sound design and the lighting and everything. It was terrifying. But when she started discovering objects inside the wooden man, again, we haven't been told exactly what this wooden man is for, what it does. We have no idea, and we're getting like breadcrumbs through the entire movie, which is what I loved a lot about the movies. We keep getting breadcrumbs about the entire film through every situation. We're just getting little pieces here and there. So when she starts finding the inanimate objects, she finds the lock of hair, she finds the tooth, she finds blood. My mind immediately went to witchcraft of some sort. Like I immediately went, okay,
Right?
these are like in a sense of like a voodoo doll where they say you need like something that belonged to the person and you can make a voodoo doll. And I'm not saying that this was a voodoo doll, but I just felt something. I was like, okay, there are things in there. And then Darcy's reaction, where she was like, put those back. I was
Yeah.
like, okay. I was like, that, like Darcy was very adamant, like put it back. There was anger in her voice. She was not pleased. And I was like, all right, she is clearly setting up something. What at this point, we still don't know. But this is when I started to be like, all right, the Wooden Man is here for a reason. Again, we still don't know yet. But I'm like, and Darcy is clearly planning something. I'm just not sure what.
So, after observing what appears to be Dani's apparition um, in the house,
Mm-hmm.
uh, um, Yana panics and manages to flee after finding her keys inside the crate the
Yeah.
mannequin was transported in. So we had another jump scare here where she saw Dani's ghost.
Yeah.
First, she saw her on the video camera,
Mm-hmm.
and then immediately after, she looked up. The flash hit, and you
Oh
see
God.
Dani's ghost in the middle of the room, and the Dani's
Yeah.
ghost said, "Run."
Run.
Yeah.
It's another, again, I wasn't sure what Dani's role in the movie as a ghost was going to be.
Right.
But when she told Yana to run, that's when I went, okay, at this moment, I don't think Yana had done anything malicious or wrong. I think Yana is also unaware of the circumstances that are happening around her, because when Dani's spirit said run, and all of a sudden she's able to find her keys in the box and she takes off, there's nothing that stops her from leaving. I wasn't sure if something was going to, but no, nothing stops her from leaving. And I was like, okay, see, wasn't sure where that was going, but now I'm a little bit more confident. And we still don't know, but at this point, I'm like, okay, I don't think Yana had anything to do with anything negative at this point, because Dani clearly warned her to go. And I'm like, what does this mean? Darcy is now alone in the house with the Wooden Man. So I'm very intrigued on what's supposed to happen now when it's just her and the Wooden Man.
So Ted returns to the house to find Darcy alone upstairs. Darcy reveals to Ted that she knows he was responsible for Dani's murder. So we get a reveal here.
Mm-hmm.
She reveals that another reveal, that she in turn killed Olin to avenge
Yeah.
Dani. So she's the one that snuck into the psychiatric hospital to get revenge on Olin. But upon performing a psychometric reading of Olin's glass eye, she discovered that he was in fact innocent.
Yep.
Rather, it was Ted who arranged Dani's murder, enlisting the help of Ivan, a brutish orderly at the psychiatric hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Olin overheard discussions between Ted and Ivan regarding the plan to kill Dani. This was in another flashback. And upon his planned release from the hospital, he arrived at the house that evening to warn Dani. So, to prove his innocence, Ted tells Darcy he is going to meet with the investigator who presided over the case and have the investigator phone her to explain the evidence. Ted returns to the hospital and calls his cell phone. So he leaves the cell phone there because there's no phone in the house. He
Mm-hmm.
says, "Pick this up. I'm going to call the people you need to speak with, but please pick up this phone so we can just, you know,
Yep.
take care of this. You have concerns. I'm going to address them and let you know about it."
Yeah, he's still trying to be uh caring and a doctor at this point. He's like, listen, you're not well. Do you remember? And he names the officer, the investigator. He goes, I don't have their number on me. I'm gonna leave my phone. It's at the office. Just answer it. Just wait here and answer it. I will be right back. And he goes and does his thing.
So Darcy, she is unaware that Ted has removed a trap door cover on the floor near where the phone is because she's
Mm-hmm.
blind. And she goes to retrieve the phone, but unfortunately falls to the stone floor below. It's several feet. It's a big
Yeah.
drop.
It's a
Uh,
yeah.
and the tension's building here again because he's calling. And then
Mm-hmm.
that's when we get the reveal that he lifted the thing, through a flashback, that he lifted it up, the trap door. And you're hoping like maybe she uses her abilities to see that, no, I
Mm-hmm.
can't do this. But no, she didn't. She just gets up and you're like, no, don't do it. Don't do it. And then
Yes, there's that moment of like, don't do it, because it's ringing, dude. Like she's
yeah,
letting it ring, and it's ringing, and it's ringing, and like there's clear emotion, like she's broken, she's upset, and I'm like, is she aware? Like, is she aware what he's trying to do? Because she's not moving, and then she gets up and she starts taking those steps, and you're like, oh no, she doesn't, and she falls through. And as you mentioned, you don't see it because it's so dark. It's so dark underneath the trap door. She just falls, and it's relatively high. They made it a point to show, when Yana dropped her phone, when they're looking over the balcony, they're showing you like this is a pretty significant height, and she falls through. But that whole scene where she's like sitting there contemplating, I was like, is she aware? But unfortunately, she wasn't.
So, at Ted's command, Ivan visits the house to ensure Darcy's fate. So, clearly he's working with
Mm-hmm.
and for Ted, only to be stalked and brutalized by the wooden mannequin,
Bro.
which Darcy appears to supernaturally animate before
Mm-hmm.
succumbing to her wounds. She hits her head
Yeah.
in the lower part of the house there. This I wrote down as the wow moment of the movie.
Yeah, dude.
We finally get to the point of the mannequin, and what a wow
Mhm.
moment it was.
Yeah, like when she realizes, because she doesn't fall to her death, she's still conscious, but
Yeah.
like her injuries are too severe, like she's not gonna make it. When she realizes that Ivan's in the house with her, she's like, uh-oh, you're the guy. Like you're the one who physically did it. And she puts her hand in the air and she kind of does this hand gesture and she's got it to her chest, and we get the animation of the wooden man, and it is absolutely terrifying. This thing is just walking through the house with a purpose, with clear intent, and Ivan is freaking out. Like
Of
Ivan's
course he
running.
is.
He's like, what is going? He's running. He's trying to go up the stairs. He can't get anywhere. And it gets to the point where like you'll see it in the shadows and it's not there anymore. Again, a great use of the environment and dread. And the wooden man again is terrifying in itself, but now you have this inanimate object and she's controlling it. And Ivan tries to oh god, he tries to go over the balcony because there's nowhere for him to go. And he makes it over the balcony, but he breaks his leg very badly.
Yeah.
And you look at his leg and you're like, uh-oh, this isn't looking good for you, my man. And the wooden man is on his tail.
Yeah. And then once again, it's another trope where the inanimate objects please don't come to life, and the
Yeah,
inanimate
it
object
comes
comes
to
to
life.
life.
Comes to
And
life.
I'll be honest with you, that didn't even go through my head the entire movie. I
Mhm.
didn't think about the mannequin getting up.
I had no idea what the Mannequin was gonna
I
do. I
mean,
had no idea.
there was one moment where I felt like maybe something was gonna happen when she was examining the mannequin up
Mhm.
close, and they hinted at it because remember the mannequin was moving,
Yes.
but I'm just like, no, they're not gonna go there. We have all this other
Yeah,
stuff going on.
yeah.
Maybe Darcy had a way of manipulating it. I didn't
Mhm.
think the mannequin was gonna get up and start chasing somebody by the end of the movie.
Yeah,
And
again, we know very little about it, so
yeah,
it could have been just one of those things where it acts as somewhat of a conduit that you just being in its presence can bring paranoia. We don't know. We don't know if it's more about a feeling you get being around it, that uncomfortable nature, the feeling of being watched, the feeling of being interrogated, if you will. We don't know. So, like you said, when this thing gets up, you're like, oh no,
right, right.
I'm
And
like, nah, dude, I'm out.
there's great music, and then you never see the mannequin fully. It's like in the
No.
shadows.
Yep.
It's you see it walking, but then it
Yeah.
it shifts away. Great cinematography to
Oh
kind of
yeah.
build the tension and the terror of the
Yeah.
moment as
Yeah.
well. So sometime later, we find out Ivan, having survived the attack, is committed to the psychiatric hospital by Ted, where he
Mhm.
worked. To ensure that Ivan does not confess to Danny's murder, well, so he gets convicted because he accidentally said that he saw the wooden man get up
Yeah,
and
I
chase
mean
him.
I mean, what could he say? You know what I mean? Like
Right,
that's exactly what happened. Like it's so wild because he breaks his leg and the wooden man gets a hold of him. Like the wooden
right,
man is this close and he's holding Ivan up by his head.
right,
And you're like, he's gonna pop this thing. Like he's gonna squeeze Ivan's head so there's nothing left. And unfortunately, Darcy succumbs to her wounds. Like
right,
Darcy just completely dies. And when she does that, the wooden man no longer is able to functional. It just kind of turns off.
right.
So when you see like when having going through that, Like, why wouldn't he say that? Like, he's like, yo, man, like a giant wooden man tried to kill me. Like, that's what happened. But when you see him strapped to the bed, you know this isn't good. You
Yeah.
just know, right? You're like, this is not good.
So to ensure that Ivan does not confess to Danny's murder, Ted sets free a violent cannibal in the hospital who brutally kills Ivan.
Yep.
Ted returns to the country house where he now resides alone. Excuse me. Yana broke off the relationship, disturbed by Ted's nonchalance that both Dani and Darcy died in his home.
And he's just
So,
like, whatever,
yeah,
whatever.
and she doesn't suspect anything, but she's just like,
Mm.
"You're so like, this is nothing to you. Now I gotta go." You know?
Yeah, being it's not only the idea that his previous wife died in that house, her twin sister died in that house, and not to mention the fact that Yana had experiences in that house, personal experiences. She saw the spirit of Dani, warnings, very uncomfortable nature in general. And again, he's very just nonchalant, like, are you coming back? Like, what's going like that's a major red flag. And again, I'm very happy that Yana was able to be like, nah, dude, like there's clearly something that's off and I want nothing to do with that. I don't want to be near that house. I don't even want to be near you because you're way too cool about all this.
So on the doorstep, Ted finds a small box delivered from Darcy's Oddity shop. Inside is a call bell that Darcy had earlier shown him, which she indicated was haunted by the ghost of a bellhop who died in a local hotel and kills whoever rings it.
Mm-hmm.
Ted defiantly rings the bell. He rings it several times, and he looks around. He's like laughing. He's like, "Yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah,
he's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
arrogant.
Good job, Darcy. Okay." Um, and he momentarily observes his surroundings with no indication of the spirit. As Ted begins to relax, he is unaware of the bellhop spirit standing behind him. And
Yeah,
then we cut to black,
that's
and
yep.
that's our movie.
And again, it's another situation we do not have to see it, but we know it's about to happen.
Right.
And again, very arrogantly, he thinks he's won. I remember, as I'm watching this movie, and he goes back home, I wasn't expecting the bell to appear. So I'm like, is this going to be one of those movies where he just gets away with it? Like,
Right.
is this because that is that's horrific in nature. Like that's horrific in itself. I'm like, oh my god, like this is going to be one of those things. And I started like contemplating him dating someone else and bringing them into the house. Like I was like, oh god, what's going to happen? And when he received that package and we saw the bell, and I remembered the story that she told, and we see that he's a doctor. He does not believe in any of this. He makes it a point to mention it numerous times in the movie. I believe in science. I believe in this, what I can see, what I can touch. So for him to feel so confident and arrogant, getting away with everything, there are no loose ends. Everybody's gone. For him to ring that bell, kind of take a moment, reflect, look around. He hears a noise. He's kind of like, what's that? Realizes nothing. And then there's just this level of just like, yeah, I did it. Good job, Darcy. You know what I mean? Like rubbing in her face like he got away with everything. And when you see the bellhop there, dude, like it is a terrifying image. You have this individual that is just void of color, like no color whatsoever,
Yeah.
very pale, nothing but white eyes, the uniform just standing beside him, and it cuts to black, and you don't need to see it, but she even in death she was able to get him
Yeah.
because of his arrogance.
So let's get to our initial thoughts here upon watching the movie.
Mhm.
When it was done, I said, "Okay, now I see what everybody was talking about." It was really unique. I thought it was going to be just a typical ghost story when it started, and in a way, it was a ghost story. But there were several supernatural elements to the movie, as well as some you touched on this dramatic elements,
Mhm.
and Ted is not a good person. He couldn't just break up with his wife. He had to go this whole ordeal to get her out of his life. He's not a
Mhm.
good person. So um, thankfully Yana was spared of that, because who knows, she could have been next.
Yeah. Yeah.
If down the line one day. So in a way, it was a tale of revenge,
Mhm.
and it was really unique how they used Darcy's abilities
Mhm.
because that's so great. She's blind, but she could see everything.
Yes, and I like that aspect of the character where she's blind, but yet she can still see so much. Like you, after I watched it, I was like, okay, I get the buzz. Every once in a while, it's always a nice reminder that when it comes to film in general, you have we talked about it before, major movies like IPs and whatnot, and big studio films that every once in a while someone will find like a smaller gem like this and get the word out there. And I'm very happy that they did because I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's one of those movies that you don't know where the story's going to go. I would absolutely recommend if anyone were to watch this. But hey, Rick, have you heard about Oddity? I'm like, yeah, don't watch any trailers. You're just going blind.
Right.
It really helped the experience. And even I feel like I'll have to pull it up afterwards, but I'm gonna watch the trailer and see how much the trailer gives away because I still think that it was probably handled really well because the movie does a really good job of doing sleight of hand. Again, you're thinking, okay, it's going to be a typical ghost story. Maybe Dani is going to be our centric spirit within the film. Maybe Dani's going to be that thing that is going to be bothering Yana, and she's the woman that was sleeping with her husband when they like we don't. These are just assumptions that are happening, and that's not the case. And the movie does a really good job of pivoting. You have multiple elements. You have Dani's spirit, you have Darcy's abilities, and then you have the Wooden Man. You have a tale of vengeance. And just drama. Like I was like, this is a hard drama. Like there's clear pain from Darcy losing her sister, feeling like something was done, and she was misled. She took action in her own hands, and finding out she was wrong. And she even says it. She goes, "I'm going to have to pay for that. Like I'm going to pay for what I did to him because he was completely innocent." She let her rage and the information that was presented to her take over. And in unfortunately for her, she was absolutely wrong, and she has to kind of fix that. And we've got multiple elements. Dude, we got like witchcraft in this thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you
Yeah.
got you
Just
got this
randomly.
idea
Yeah.
of her controlling this, and like the idea that because again they make it very clear that her abilities are based on like again she's blind but on sight, being able to use objects, see things, see the past, see the connection, see the person, and all of a sudden she's able to control this object with malicious intent. And it's like, dude, there's some like witchcraft, and there's a lot of elements in this movie that sometimes can make a movie feel bloated. We talk about movies all the times where sometimes too many things can make a movie feel bloated, whether it's cast, whether it's just story beats in general. This movie ties in a lot of elements, but it never felt bloated. It never felt too crowded, and I enjoyed it. And again, it felt smaller scale. It was a small scale story. It felt small scale, and I think sometimes when people see movies like that, we're reminded of how great something small can be. So I was very happy that I found it, watched it, and listened to all the like hot buzz that was going around because I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So, as of this recording, it's October 2024. So, this movie's only been out for a few months since
Mhm,
July, but it is a lower budget movie. So, to date, it's made 1.3 million.
mhm.
Um, so it's only made that much, but there's no information. We can't find the budget for this movie. I did look it up. It did make 500,000 in its opening weekend. So it made a lot
Okay.
of money, the bulk of its total gross in the opening weekend, but um we don't know how much this was made for. So now that we know how much it was made for, I would be shocked if this was made for more than $100,000, if that. Most of the
Yeah,
budget probably went into the mannequin, to be honest
yeah.
with you.
Like again, and it's I looked it up as well, and there's no information on the budget. There's none, absolutely zero. And again, I wonder if that was another intentional thing from the creators, from the director, because oftentimes, sometimes people can be deterred from a budget. Like we've seen that before. And it's unfortunate where some people are like, oh my God, that movie looks low budget, or that movie only has a budget of this. I'm gonna wait for whatever reason. There's a lot of negative connotations with low budget films. And I think that they were just like, nope, we're not even gonna let people know how much money. Nope. It's not important. Like it's not
Right.
important what the budget was in making this movie. And again, when you look at it, in no way does it look cheap. In no way did you or I look at this movie and go, it looks cheap. It's just that it's safe to assume that the budget was relatively low based on, again, it was such a less is more intimate
Right.
story, and with a cast that isn't really well known, very limited locations. But that doesn't mean that a movie can't be great, because the movie looks fantastic, great cinematography, great lighting, and then you have this amazing prop, because this thing is horrifying. Like,
Yeah.
you can tell that a lot of craftsmanship went into that prop. And then clearly it's more than a prop, because you have a man in a suit at some point walking throughout in this thing. So like, you can tell they put a lot of love and care into that particular piece. But like you, if I had to guess, man, I'd extreme this is extremely low budget, but not because it looks bad, not because it sounds bad. It's fantastic. But just based on what we see within the resource, I'm like, oh man, they probably didn't have to spend an enormous, massive IP project budget, and it's still as good as it is. And that's a testament to the creators, writers, and directors, and everyone involved.
Yeah, and the buzz with Oddity it was getting, it was getting one of the best horror movies of the year, if not the
Mhm,
best horror movie of the year. I read it was the scariest movie released this year. I read
mhm.
that. Um, and then I also read, like, don't go in blind. Go in
Yeah,
blind and you'll be surprised by the movie. So I read a lot of different things about it. And also the critical acclaim was pretty shocking too.
it's
It
really
did
high.
it debuted with such great critical acclaim
Yeah.
when it was released. So that's as far as that goes. And then you touched on it. The mannequin is just such a great prop in this movie. We have no idea why it's there. And then when we find out, it's like such a wow moment. But once again, here we go. Practical effects win again, right?
Yeah, dude. Like, on a massive IP, I can just imagine like CGI usage and whatnot.
Yeah.
And you touched on it while we were talking about the film. You Even while it's in motion, you never fully see it. The lighting is helping. So again, that's an intentional choice, and that could be to protect the image of the prop, or just for the story aspect of it. Like, you never really see it, but it always helps. Lighting helps so much, especially with practical effects. You want to elevate the greatness, even though you go, okay, like if you see something in a fully lit room, it might not look as great, but they lit this thing so well, man. It looks so awesome. And again, you can tell they put a lot of hard work into that thing. But the critical praise, as you mentioned, was very high, very, very, very high. And just seeing filmmakers again, on my social media, I follow a lot of filmmakers and directors. And one of my favorite things is when filmmakers and directors make it a point, who are not attached with the movie, and just saying, hey, I just saw this great movie. Please, more people need to watch it. And I'm like, okay, like Scott Derrickson, who's a director who has made some great things. I saw him post about it. He's like, guys, there's this great movie out called Oddity. Check it out. And I don't even know if it was playing locally by us in the theater. I didn't even look it up. And I was just like, okay, like, when is it coming to streaming? I need to see this ASAP. And the moment it was available, I was like, all right, I'm on it.
Yeah. So, obviously, since it's so early, we couldn't recognize for award season because it hasn't been out long enough. So we
Oh
won't get
yeah.
to touch on that as far as this goes, and we won't get to touch on what its final gross is because it's still in
Mhm,
theaters as well. It's doing the whole theaters, but it's been out for
mhm.
a little bit now. We're going to make it available for renting on streaming and such. But let's give a little shout out to the small cast here.
Yeah.
Apologies for mispronouncing these names because they went with an all Irish cast. So sometimes
Yes.
in Ireland, there's some unique names. Um, so as we have, have this here as Gwilym Lee as
Mhm.
Ted. We have Carolyn Bracken as the sisters, Dani and Darcy, the twins. We have Tadig Murphy as Olin Boole, Carolyn Menton as Yana, and Steve Wall as Ivan. Shout out to Carolyn Bracken as the dual role of Dani and
Oh yeah.
Darcy. Such two different unique roles, and she's great as Dani. I really like her
Mhm.
as Dani, actually. And
Yeah.
then as just Darcy, just the polar opposite of her sister, the clairvoyant. She played blind really well as well. But
Mhm.
to me, this is her movie.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Again, I had no idea she was playing a dual role. So it was a pleasant experience to see her play Dani for the opening, and then we meet Darcy, and I'm like, oh, twins. And I was like, okay. And she's doing, two roles, and we get to see, different portrayals. Like, we get to see her as Dani, get to see her as Darcy, because we get more flashbacks as Dani. So we get to see that perspective, and we get to see Darcy play these two roles. It's her movie, without a shadow of a doubt. Like, it's her performance that's driving this movie. Everyone does a great job, but this is her baby.
Yeah. So we're going to start closing things out here. And I'm just going to touch on the fact that you had said it. This is just one of those movies where less is more,
Yeah.
and the less is more approach wins. Um, I want to say probably Jaws kind of established that.
Mm-hmm.
Steven Spielberg, about the whole less is more approach, and a
Yeah.
lot of horror movies have taken that approach as well. Um, and then yet again, the horror film community just continues just beating this drum of originals. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I wish other genres, we had more originals in other genres. Whether it be action, drama, or whatever the case may be, because horror just has this grasp on
Yeah.
originals. There are IPs, obviously, but just these creators, they just keep coming up with these creative ways to display this genre to us. So just more power to the horror community.
Yeah, and it's no secret. One of my favorite genres is sci-fi, because I've always said that sci-fi allows you to make your own rules per story, and I think that horror films also have that ability, because there's many different avenues that you can explore when it comes to horror, whether it's supernatural or things out of the ordinary, things that you can't explain versus what you can explain, and this is one of those movies that utilizes that. Again, we are being taught from beginning of the movie all the way up into the end different aspects about these characters, about this type of story. Again, there's multiple elements of supernatural, there's multiple elements that fall into the genre of horror, which again, I said, it doesn't feel bloated. Again, you've got like the haunted house cliche, the inanimate object that comes to life cliche, the we think we know who the killer was and it actually turns to be someone else cliche. We've seen these in horror before,
Right.
and sometimes those are the focal point of the movie. I could think of a movie like What Lies Beneath, where the whole aspect of like, oh, we think this happened, and the whole movie is setting up to reveal that that's not actually what happened. Where in this movie, we had multiple aspects of horror genres that mixed together really well, and I think it allowed them to come up with something original, and that's great. And we're always craving original movies because they are out there, and we tell people all the time they are out there. You just have to find them. You know what I mean? This is one of those movies. I had a friend hit me up the other day because I had mentioned that I saw Oddity, and he was like, "Ooh, let me know." I think, he said, "Let me know. Me and my wife have been looking for something in the horror movie that we haven't seen before. Something new, something." I was like, "Oh, then this is it." I said, "Definitely watch Oddity. It's different." And I told him, "Go in blind. Don't watch a single trailer, and just go for it." I'm glad. I'm glad, because it feels like that we're starting to see this more and more. They've been saying for the past few years that like horror's got this really good kick right now. We're getting movies by Jordan Peele, we're getting movies from John Krasinski, like A Quiet Place. Like horror's kind of like stepped back up again, because for a while, and I've been a fan of horror, like any genre can kind of fall into the tropes to the point where it's detrimental to the film. It's like, oh, we've seen this before. Ah, okay,
Right.
we've seen it before. We know what we're getting. Look, and I still enjoy those movies like that. I love all the Fast and Furious movies. I know exactly what I'm getting when I'm into
That's
those
right.
movies. You know what I mean? I know exactly what I'm gonna get. So it's the same thing, but it's always refreshing when we can get a movie in any genre. Um, but I love horror, so we're talking about horror for right now. But I love that we can still get a horror movie in 2024 feel original, even though it has elements that we're very familiar with. And everyone in the cast does a great job. I got to give credit to the writers, the director, because again, this movie just keeps doing a reroute system. Like he's like, "Oh, we're going over here. No, we're going this way. Okay, we're gonna go over here. No, we're going this way." Like the idea that Danny's spirit's in the house, and we probably only see Danny's spirit maybe twice, three times max in the entire movie as a spirit, where that could have been a huge focal point. It could have been like Danny's spirit could have been the main focal point of it. They're like, no, that's not the point of the movie. It's not the point of the movie. The point of the movie is this, and we're building this. So I got to give the movie a lot of credit. It did a lot with less, and it took the less is more approach, and I appreciate that, because it doesn't turn you off in any sense. There's nothing that's too far. There's nothing that makes you go, "Oh, I wish they would have pulled back." It's like, no, it gives you just enough for you to go, "Okay, I feel satisfied."
All righty, folks. Well, That was the Panel Bros official breakdown for Oddity. If you could please give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube at the Panel Bros, we'd appreciate that. Also, if you could let us know how you felt about Oddity in the comments below, we would appreciate that as well. And let us know if you have any plans for spooky season,
Yes, yes.
any rewatches or any new watches that you have planned, please let us know in the comments below. We have a nice handful of movies that we're
Oh
gonna
yeah.
do breakdowns for you for the month of October 2024, and we can't wait to get to it. So, for Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.